We are back. Another damn fantasy podcast here with you to talk some rookies. One night before the NFL draft. Plenty of speculation on where these guys are going to fall. Plenty of speculation on their value going in and coming out of the NFL draft. We're going to touch on all of it right after this.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk.
Welcome in to another edition, an off-season, preseason edition of another damn fantasy podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Steinbacher, and as always, I can't do it without my main man, Josh. Josh, it's been, 3 months since we talked online about fantasy football. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm excited. It's fun to be back into football season, and the draft is tomorrow. Like I was telling you before the show, it really snuck up on me, even though I've been doing research. I took like a week off, and all of a sudden now it's here. So it'll be interesting to see where everyone goes tomorrow. But this is a good time for us to get, to talk about some of these rookies. So.
Yeah, rookie drafts, I know, at least for my dynasty leagues, they start up pretty quickly once the NFL draft is over. I mean, we're just all kind of sitting around twiddling our thumbs, so we are ready to rock and roll for some fantasy. So we just put our rookie drafts in May. I got one that starts after Memorial Day. I got one that starts mid-June. A lot can change between now and then. You get rookie mini camps and all of that. But I thought, tonight let's talk a little bit about who we're looking for, what values they might have before tomorrow, who's going to slide up, who's going to slide down, those kind of things. But as always, if you're in here, you're in the chat with us, make sure to jump on in. Let us know your thoughts about this rookie class coming in. Overall, I kind of think it's a little bit of a lackluster rookie class. When I think about the quarterbacks and so many question marks around the quarterbacks, there's not that stud wide receiver. We got Ted McMillan. We've got some guys in Luther Burden and Matthew Golden, but you don't have the Jamar Chase, the Justin Jefferson, the CeeDee Lamb types in this draft. Or even last year when Marv Harrison, came out. You don't have those kind of guys. And then you just got one guy, one running back, that kind of stands above them all. So does that cloud our judgment for some of these other running backs who could still be great? So I just want to dive into all of that. Josh, before we do that, any overarching thoughts about this class just as a whole?
No, I think you kind of nailed it. I will say Cam Ward has grown on me quite a bit from when I started looking at some of his tape, some of his highlights way back when. And I think he would have been kind of middle of the group last year. Like last year we were spoiled with the amount of quarterbacks that went first round and the excitement with that from a fantasy standpoint. And I think Cam Ward would have been right in third, fourth, fifth range of that whole group. So he would have been up there. But outside of that, Shadour's actually been less exciting to me as I've watched him. I'm not saying he can't be successful. I'm just saying, from a fantasy standpoint, who I'm excited to go after. Quarterback being thin is interesting, and then, like you said, we have one top-heavy player who we're going to touch on right away. But other than that, there's the people that do this or that follow it constantly, even more than we do, will tell you that there's a lot of great finds in this draft. But I think that's one of those things they say every year. I think you have to admit this year's a little bit of a down year from offensive output. So it's going to be, there's still excitement in that too, right? Because now, we have, I don't know if you follow Brett Coleman at all. He's a guy that puts out a lot of film content for NFL players and scouts, a whole bunch of guys. And I can't remember what his number was, but he said that he thinks on average every year is about 15 to 20 players that NFL teams think are first round talents. And he thinks that number is
32 picks.
Wow. Right, exactly. And he thinks that this year is even a little bit less than normal. And so I think that definitely plays a factor. But there's still excitement there because you want to see how your team picks, and you can still get we know from history you can still get the right guy in the third, fourth round. So it'll be it'll be fun as per usual. But yeah, I think you have to admit this year is a little bit of a down year in terms of top end talent. So
Yeah, it definitely feels like if I don't have the 101,
mm-hmm.
I might not care about my first round pick. At least right now, I'm certain between now and say Memorial Day, I will fall in love with some guy that we probably won't even talk about tonight. Think back to the Clyde, days when he gets drafted by the Chiefs at 32 overall and becomes the 101 all of a sudden. Guys like that. Trey Lance going 3 overall to San Francisco catapults him up. Like it's gonna happen tomorrow. Somebody is going to get picked tomorrow. That's going to change the entire landscape of how we look at the rookies right now, strictly based on draft capital, NFL draft capital.
Right.
So excited to see who that might be. But we're going to talk through these rookies. We're going to talk about most of the top guys, a lot of the guys that you're hearing about right now as you listen to podcasts and prepare for tomorrow or the rookie draft. We're not 100% sure where they're going to end up yet, right? Maybe we know where Cam Ward is going to end up. But other than that, it's just all mock drafts and a lot of speculation. And so that's kind of what we're going to build off tonight. Who can gain that fantasy value? Who can lose that fantasy value? And we've already mentioned him a couple of times without mentioning his name. But I don't think anything can happen tomorrow night that changes the fact that Ashton Jeanty is the 101 no matter what format you play. Doesn't matter if you're super flex, tight end, premium. I don't think it matters. I don't think it changes tomorrow. Do you think that Ashton Jeanty's value, let's jump into running back right away, 101, can his value change tomorrow at any point?
No, not really. I'm trying to think of a scenario where he goes to a team that it just doesn't make sense, but I think he's pretty much lineup proof for, at this point where he's going to make a running game better. He's such a great prospect that, I have some spots I prefer him to land. I don't know if we want to talk about those yet, but but I don't know if he can do anything to hurt his value, honestly, unless if he falls this would be asinine, but if he somehow falls into the late 20s and there's something all NFL teams know that nobody else analysts know otherwise, sure. But that's like a 0.001% chance of happening. So I think he's going to be a really sought after running back. And rightfully so. He's awesome. So yeah. And we have seen that, right? Weird reports coming out. Why are these guys sliding down? Those kind of things we don't hear about until draft day. Do not expect that with Ashton Jeanty. If you're here with us tonight, let us know, is Ashton Jeanty the 101 automatically, no matter what, in your rookie drafts? It doesn't matter what format you're in. I want to know in the chat. Yes, no. If it's no, tell us why. Who is it? Is it Cam Ward? Is it Ted McMillan? Who do you have over him and in what kind of a format it is? But Josh, you mentioned you want to know what kind of team, like what team Ashton Jeanty is going to go to. Kind of talk us through that and how that might even help more value him at the 101. Yeah, for sure. I think the Raiders at 6 make the most sense to me. And I just think that they're for a team that isn't particularly great, but they had just such a poor running game last year. And their offensive line is not great, but I just think in terms of what we can see from a team go from really bad to decent in terms of rushing game, I think he can make a big impact there. I see a lot of Ashton Jeanty to Jacksonville as well at 5. And I again, that would make a big improvement. That'd be great. But I think for fantasy reasons, you don't want Jacksonville to think that they still have to give touches to Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne and things like that. But so I like the Raiders there at 6. If it gets spicy during the draft. Oh yeah, Lee says Geno needs a running game. Yeah, for sure.
He loves that play action.
Yeah, Geno Smith makes that Raiders offense better initially. They have Brock Bowers there. And you throw Ashton Jeanty back there, the guy who can't be tackled. It's going to be awesome. I think the most fun I've heard from like a trade standpoint is if somebody like the Bears or something try to hop up to 5 and take Jeanty, like if they can get the Jags to trade back a little bit. I guess I just said that you can't really lose value. I'm still a little nervous about like the Patriots offense, right? They pick at 4. So if they pick him, obviously if the Giants if the Giants pick him at 3, I think they're missing out on the best talent available.
Right.
Because I think Abdul Carter is probably the best talent in the draft. But anyway, outside of Travis Hunter, but I'm getting off track a little bit. But yeah, so I think Ashton Genty's going to go in that 5, 6, 7 range. It'd be fun to see a team trade up to really go grab him. But I think he immediately makes the Raiders a better offense. I think while he improves Jacksonville from a fantasy, I guess that would make me a little bit less excited. But I mean, if the Bears do make a move and he goes to Caleb Williams and the newly led Bears with Ben Johnson, that scares me as a Vikings fan, what the Bears can do with him in there. Because it's funny, I was talking to on Simon's pod. I gave this really ridiculous analysis of Ashton Genty. When I was a kid and used to play old video games on like the PlayStation 1, we used to make creative players, the guys that were 5'5", and 450 pounds, because the game glitched out and they just couldn't be tackled because they were super fast, super strong. Like that's kind of like Ashton Genty. You watch his highlights, people just bounce off him. He's so low to the ground. He's so powerful. He's so fast. He's shifty. It'll be exciting to see where he goes. But I want him to go somewhere like Las Vegas from a fantasy standpoint, because I know that he'll get that bell cow work that we want him to, and he's going to be on the field the whole game, and he's going to put up, I think, really good numbers. But
they want to run the ball. Like that is their they want to run the ball. They want to keep the ball. Like I assume they're going to try to keep the ball out of Geno's hands a little bit. It definitely would make sense. And they don't have a running back, whereas the Jaguars with ETN, now you're in a bell cow. They still have, as you mentioned, Tank Bigsby there. So now it's also a new regime in Jacksonville. So your new GM, everything has turned over in Jacksonville. And it's turned over in Las Vegas as well, as you've already seen with the quarterback shuffle. But yeah, I think just getting to Las Vegas would probably be the best ceiling outcome for a guy like Ashton Genty. Now, if he falls and, I don't know, the Saints pick him up at 12 and maybe he's like the heir apparent to Kamara, right? I don't love that, but maybe. Or not. They're not at 12. They're at 9?
9, yeah.
Or all the way down to 12 for Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Dallas has been kind of searching for that next running back ever since Zeke. Yep. They even brought Zeke back to make him the next running back after Zeke. It still didn't work out. So Tony Pollard's gone, those kind of things. So I think there's plenty of options in the top 12 picks. I don't think we need to belabor the point too much. Ashton Genty is the stud of the draft, especially when it comes to fantasy football. Now, there's some other running backs out there, guys who have, I would say maybe a couple months ago, maybe even 3 to 4 months ago, they weren't really getting the hype at running back. We see the phenomenal running back season that just in general we had in fantasy football and around the NFL. Maybe that's kind of bringing the running back back. We don't see a lot of first-round running backs in the last couple of years, but now there's a couple that have creeped in. Omarion Hampton is now being mocked in the first round. You could potentially see a guy like Travion Henderson or Caleb Johnson find a way into the back of the first. Very unlikely, I believe, but there's always potential. Those are probably Friday guys. Quinshawn Judkins as well, Friday guy. But let's talk about Omarion Hampton, because I think he's probably the most expected to also go tomorrow night. I've seen him mocked to Pittsburgh at 20. I've seen him mocked to Denver or 20 and Pittsburgh at 21. I believe I've seen him mocked even a little later in the first round. Somebody after Pittsburgh there. Pittsburgh's also being mocked like every single offensive player under the sun. So who knows there? But Denver has always kind of been that team. Sean Payton loves his running backs. He can use them like Alvin Kamara, like he did back in New Orleans. Like that's kind of been the team for Omarion Hampton. Everything I've seen anyways come out. I like what I see out of Hampton. I think he would be a good fit with the Denver offense, especially with the Bo Nix and everything they did last year. They looked good. They looked better as the season went on. Now you could add a guy like Hampton. Where does Hampton fall for you? Do you think Denver or even a place like Pittsburgh would be, because Pittsburgh has to replace Najee Harris.
Yep.
They have a lot to replace, but Najee Harris is one of them. So
right.
What do you think about those teams, or could he even go earlier in your mind?
Personally, I'm less certain he's a first round talent. But that being said, it is appearing that he's going to go in the later rounds of the first, later picks of the first round. I see him mocked to Denver and Pittsburgh quite a bit as well. I like Denver more because you kind of already mentioned it with Sean Payton at coach for all the things I dislike about Sean Payton. He knows how to use his running backs. He's from North Carolina, Javonte Williams, North Carolina. Like there's you can see how he'd be excited to be used by the coaching staff in Denver, a team that is kind of up and coming. They overperformed last year. And so if they can kind of build on that, their defense was so great that they're a team that, it makes sense for them to go for a home run hitter type playmaker on offense. Outside of that, though, I'm not super, super excited about other landing spots. I don't know if I like Pittsburgh is still a quarterback away. I know they brought in DK Metcalf and they have George Pickens still, and the plan is to have those two guys at wide receiver, which is a nice wide receiver pairing. But, on the depth chart, it's Mason Rudolph throwing the ball again. And so I just, from a fantasy perspective, yes, I'm sure they like Omarion Hampton, but I don't want to draft Omarion Hampton if he's going to Pittsburgh. With Jalen Warren there, the Arthur Smith system, I'm sure he'll get plenty of carries. I don't know if that offense is going to be where we want it to be yet for fantasy purposes. So I don't really like that. But anything after that, for a team that thinks they can utilize him, I feel like he's a little bit more of a home run type hitter guy, and that's why I'm not as big on him in the first round. But like I said, if he goes to Denver, I like that setup, and honestly, the teams at the back end that made the playoffs, like they have good rosters already, so why not if they feel like he fits in? Who am I to say not taking him in the latter part of the first round? Because he is an exciting player, not too bad in the blocking game either. So he should be able to get on the field with whatever team drafts him. So
yeah, Arizona 16 is probably too early for Hampton. But they've been running out James Conner for years now, so that would be fun. I think that would be a way to get younger, continue to get younger after adding Trey McBride, Marv Harrison Jr. That would be a fun team to see draft Omarion Hampton. I don't expect it. Again, I think it's a little bit too early for him. And then you look at the end of the draft, and you don't see a lot of teams that are running back needy.
Right.
Your Vikings potentially. I know they brought back Aaron Jones, but again, he's like 31 at this point, right? So
we
potentially there.
Yeah, we picked up Jordan Mason as well, who's not necessarily lights out, but still an option. I don't know if it was did you mention this to me, but the Commanders, do we like Omarion Hampton to the Commanders perhaps?
I would like him on that offense for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Like that'd be another fun offense to kind of add him to. And I know there's been some swirls around the Chiefs potentially going running back at 31. At the end of the day, I don't think they'll do that. I think they've kind of learned their lesson, taking Clyde at the end of the first a couple years back. But I do know there has been some swirls. I think that what I saw today was actually Travion Henderson was somebody they Zoom called with, I think today or yesterday. Okay. So definitely some running backs being talked about there. But no, Hampton is a guy I think that, I'll talk about a little bit later on, but I think he's somebody who, depending on his draft spot, could really fluctuate his draft value come say Monday when rookie drafts really start to fire up. Lee says the Bengals. Yes, I don't disagree. I think the Bengals would be stupid because of how much money they're paying to their offense. They really got to find an offensive line or some defense there. But yes, I mean a team that obviously they have Chase Brown, but a completely different run style. You get a guy like a Jonathan Taylor or Najee Harris or those type of downhill style runners in Omarion Hampton.
Yep.
Chase Brown is not that, so it's kind of be a good committee there if he went to Cincinnati. Let's talk about the kind of the consensus right now, third overall running back, at least for fantasy wise, maybe not the NFL draft, but that is Travion Henderson.
Yep.
He's being mocked more for early in the day on Friday. Really unsure where this guy could end up. I just kind of talked about the Chiefs had Zoom call with him, I think yesterday at the end of the first round. But most people are mocking him there to the middle of the second round, maybe even to late second round. I think he's kind of a guy that NFL teams don't value super high. But man, I know watching the college film, like he is a guy who can absolutely explode and find the end zone. So I kind of want to get your thoughts on Travion Henderson here. And honestly, if we want to loop in his college teammate and Quinshon Judkins as well, we definitely can. Judkins a little bit further down in the mock drafts right now, the third, fourth round. If he pushes the Saturday, that really hurts running backs' values in dynasty leagues. So there's definitely a gap there. But the two Ohio State guys, what are your thoughts here? I'm definitely a fan of Henderson, and I think in the right spot, he could potentially close the gap between him and Hampton. But right now, it's a pretty wide gap.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I heard either today or yesterday, I was listening to something, and someone was like, "Yeah, why the team should just draft both Henderson and Quinshon Judkins because you have the tough bruising between the tackles guy and Judkins, and then you have the speed and electrifying explosion of Travion Henderson." That's right. No, I think situation will be big for Henderson. I do like him, but I also agree with what you said. I'm not sure that he's first round talent level in the eyes of NFL teams. The thing about Travion Henderson that I do like, and I actually had this thought earlier today. I was thinking maybe it'd be kind of fun if he goes to the Browns. And normally it's not fun for anyone to go to the Browns. That's like where talented players go to get lost in the annals of history. But if they end up taking Travis Hunter too, right? And they have Joe Flacco right now, maybe throwing the ball around. That's not super exciting, but he can get the ball around the field. And if you have Jerry Jeudy, Travis Hunter, and then Travion Henderson out of the backfield, I mean,
keep that out of the grave.
Yeah, that's right. Still have David and Njoku. Like they have an offense that has some weapons. There's a little bit of excitement there. So if Stefanski can get them going, so I think that's kind of an interesting concept. And if I'm a fan of an NFL team, if my team likes him, I'm okay taking Henderson sometime in the early to mid second round. That sounds about right. And I think for fantasy purposes, for us as we get ready for drafts and things like that, if we see a team take him in the top half of the second round, I think we feel good that he's going to get his reps. So he's going to get touches regardless of the team he goes to. Obviously, you hope he goes to a team where he will be kind of more of a feature, but I don't think he's ever going to be the bell cow, like 3 down back. And I know that's pretty rare on most NFL teams these days, but I think that he'll definitely get on the field, especially if he gets drafted in the second round. So I think that'd be kind of exciting. And the only thing I'll say about Quinshon Judkins is that, I kind of mentioned the Bears already moving up for Genty. I can see the Bears maybe taking a guy like Quinshon Judkins if they don't get Genty in the first round. Like just, Ben Johnson comes from Detroit, having the Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery thing, and they have DeAndre Swift. And I feel like they should. I feel like if I'm Ben Johnson, I'm looking at a running back talent that I can get in the first couple of rounds to complement there, to add as a weapon, especially because they fix, quote unquote fix. They got the receiver last year, right? They got Roma Dunze. Still have DJ Moore. They have a great tight end setup. I don't know if Gerald Everett stayed there actually now off the top of my head, but they have good weapons. If Caleb Williams gets better behind a better offensive line with better coaching, like they're going to want another weapon out of the backfield. So I don't mind Judkins there as kind of a compliment to DeAndre Swift, so that they don't have to use a lot of draft capital on because they know what they're going to get and they can get him later. So
yeah, Judkins is just the guy. I just don't want to see him fall to Saturday. Like I don't even care if he's the last pick on Friday. There's just something about when you get picked in the third round versus the fourth round, especially as a running back. I don't have, like, I think Henderson is explosive enough that he is going to So long as he finds the right offense, I think he's going to have some really good fantasy value. Judkins, I think, is really going to be difficult. I try to think about like guys like David Montgomery. He's been great fantasy value because he's been on a team that wants to use him in the right way and use him a ton. Right. I think Judkins is going to have to be in a similar spot. Obviously not going to be in Detroit, probably most likely, but like a spot like that to where they're going to use him. They're going to give him the goal line work. They're going to allow him, that red zone opportunity.
Right.
Whereas Henderson's going to score from 80 yards out if he needs to.
Exactly.
So the last running back that I want to talk about is Caleb Johnson out of Iowa here.
Oh, yeah.
He's got one of the highest college dominator scores per player profiler. If you don't look at player profiler, I would always recommend it. It's a great source. It just talks about all the players, but it's a great source for rookies, especially coming out of college, kind of get some of their college stats and their college scores and how that compares to others. Definitely not a sponsor, but I just love player profile. Anyways, his college dominator score was in the 99th percentile. He was an absolute stud at Iowa, but he's not super fast. 4.57, 40 wasn't phenomenal. Decent target share, 10.8. You don't hate it as a target share for a running back, especially at Iowa, where they don't really throw the ball much anyways. So that kind of that to me gives him a little bit of pass catching ability is going to help, especially in the fantasy setting for us. But right now, being regarded as probably the 5th best running back here, but might be drafted ahead of Judkins.
Yeah.
Right? Definitely the NFL teams might value him a little bit more than they valued Judkins. Mid second, mid third round, somewhere in that range. What are your thoughts on Caleb Johnson here out of Iowa?
Yeah, so similar to you. I mean, unfortunately, I think the only thing holding him back is he doesn't have that elite speed. He doesn't have that elite physical tools and athleticism that's gonna, show that he's got a really big upside, which is a bummer because as a running back, he's very polished. He's very effective. His vision is really great. You watch any tape on him, any scouting film, and you watch any videos, people talking about Caleb Johnson. He sets up his blocks really well. He does everything really well as a running back. He's great in the outside zone. So I think a team that takes him in the 3rd round or 4th round is going to be very happy. I feel like until he gets that opportunity, though, which might be a little bit of a challenge, he's going to be like that elite handcuff range. Like you're going to want to use a later pick on him in a situation where, the team is a pretty good offense and he's going to be clear number 2. And because I feel like he'll make an opportunity great when he gets it. But I think that teams will be a little bit nervous with the lack of, what his skill set physically will be able to do against NFL competition. I think some teams will be turned off by it, but if he gets a chance and he's got good blocking from him, I think he'll be plenty effective. And I think teams will be, whoever drafts him is going to be happy that they do. But yeah, it looks like it's the 3rd round, maybe 2nd round for sure. If a team really likes, I feel like he's a guy that, depending on how his meetings have gone with teams, he might have worked his way up the boards a little bit to get around some of those speed issues. So
yeah, he's going to be very patient as a runner, and he should be able to fit into an NFL style offense,
right,
pretty decently. There shouldn't really be a whole bunch of issues there. The speed is definitely a factor, but if he can catch some balls in the NFL, then you can have some fantasy relevancy. That is for sure.
Yep.
That's going to do it kind of for running backs here. Let's move on to quarterbacks. And I'm going to pose the question. If you're on Twitter watching, you can comment. There is a comment box on Twitter. I want you to comment and let us know, do you trust the Titans with Cam Ward? It can be from an NFL standpoint or a fantasy standpoint. I don't care. But do you trust the Titans with Cam Ward? I think that is probably the first question you have to ask yourself as a fantasy football manager, if you're in the rookie drafts and you're drafting at the 102, assuming Genty has already gone 101 and you're in a super flex dynasty league, you're in a super flex dynasty league. Can you trust the Titans with Cam Ward? That to me is the big question of whether or not you want to draft Cam Ward at the 102 or not. I love Cam Ward. He fits my type of quarterback. The more I think about it, the more I watch him, the more I read, the more I fall in love with him. I can't put him over Genty this year, although most every other year he would easily be the 101 in Superflex leagues. But what are your thoughts on Cam Ward here? It's very highly presumed he goes 101 tomorrow night in the NFL draft. Tyler's already calling him a bust here in the chat. Let's see where everybody else is going. But I want to hear your thoughts, Josh. What do you think about Cam Ward as a talent, but also like with the Titans?
Yeah, for sure. As a talent, he's growing on me. The more I like early on when I started looking at some of his stuff, I was like, I don't know. He's trying to fit in tight windows, trying to keep plays alive a little bit too much. Didn't look super exciting. The more I watched, though, the more I really like his arm strength. I like how effortless it looks. It reminded me a little bit of CJ Stroud, not making a comp necessarily, but just like you can tell when a guy's got zip on his passes and when it looks effortless. And I love that as a raw skill for a quarterback going in the NFL, because I think a lot of the other stuff can be coached. I can't remember where I heard it or what outlet was providing it, but when he interviewed at like pro days and senior days and stuff, and he was talking about the coverages he sees in the NFL film and things like that. Like he's already got the processing thing down, or at least the chops to be a good processor when he gets to the league. And so, and he's just an ultra competitive, hard throwing quarterback. I think he's going to be really good. Now, will the Titans screw him up? That's entirely possible. I will say that this Brian Callahan group was not the one that was not the group that drafted Will Levis, and clearly that didn't work out. So that tracks right now. This would be their guy, and so I think we have to leave the jury still out to see if they can take a quarterback and make him effective. He's still got Calvin Ridley there. He's got a pretty good running back combo. There are some options in Tennessee. I'd like them to add another receiver later on, because we know Treylon Burks is not going to turn into anything at this point, or at least we don't think that's happening. And so I think Tennessee as a team still needs a lot of help. But the more I watch Cam Ward, the better he looks to me. And I think with the arm strength and some good coaching, I think he'll be all right. I think he'll be pretty good. Definitely in a super flex rookie draft, I'm taking him at the 102 for sure. Depending on my roster setup as well, maybe even considering the 101, but probably not. But again, I think that he gets a little bit of a bad rap because this draft there's not a ton of quarterbacks after him, right? And so people are kind of leaning towards, maybe feels like he's the best of a not so great crop of quarterbacks, but I think he is legitimately good. He just might be one of the maybe one or two that are from this draft. So.
Yeah, Lee makes a good point. He has been getting better every year since his sophomore year. He was at Washington State. I can't remember. I don't know where he was before that, before Miami. But while he was good, usually with a great prospect, somebody who is going to be the 101, especially at quarterback, these historically are guys from day one we're expecting to be the 101.
Yeah.
And I think it really probably speaks to the overall class of quarterbacks right now. And just the sheer fact that he's the best one there is. But I don't think he even remotely matches up with some of the classes that we've seen in the last couple of years at quarterback. And I don't think he gets the discussion of 101 from an NFL standpoint if he was in the last, like, say, 3 or 4 classes. At least those are the ones I can remember directly. And I really just say that because from a dynasty standpoint, we're spending a high draft capital at 102 on a guy that is going to be 24, 23 years old when he starts his career as a rookie. He doesn't break out till he's after 20 years old, which isn't great. It's not terrible for a quarterback, but you like the guys who are coming out. Trevor Lawrence, while not a great fantasy quarterback, is a great NFL quarterback. Joe Burrow, I guess not as much because he transferred and then he was great. So you kind of saw that a little bit, but you got to look at some of these guys and you think they were already talked about way before this. Cam Ward wasn't, right? And the guy that everybody was talking about potentially being the 101, if it wasn't going to be Cam Ward, it was going to be Shedeur Sanders. And I don't even know if Shedeur Sanders gets drafted tomorrow from everything I've been reading the last couple of days. He could get drafted to Cleveland. I don't even know if he gets drafted. So that there's just such a discrepancy with quarterback. But the Titans, they have to have a quarterback. You got to draft it. You can't not draft Cam Ward.
Yeah, they have to take him for sure.
And so I think that's like from my standpoint, from a fantasy value, it's probably one of the most odd rookie seasons I can think of as of late, because I don't know where the best value Cam Ward, and I already know where he's going to be drafted, and I still don't feel confident at the 102, but it makes the most sense for him to be the 102. So I digress. That's kind of like where I'm sitting with this quarterback class.
That's fair.
Tyler makes a point here. Yes, I still love Trey Lance.
I staked an entire keeper league dynasty season on Trey Lance as a rookie. I thought I had a shot.
It's actually not past tense. It's love. I love Trey Lance. I do still love Trey Lance. What did he throw? Five touchdowns and 5 interceptions in a preseason game last year or something like that? Come on. Who doesn't want that on their fantasy team?
That's right.
All right, let's talk about the aforementioned Shedeur Sanders again. I mean, even as late as today, I was looking at the PFF. I like PFF's mock draft.
Yes.
And today they have him at number 2. You look at other mock drafts, and he's at 21 to Pittsburgh. Everybody talks about Mike Tomlin. I heard a clip from Adam Schefter earlier saying Mike Tomlin really likes Sanders, but he wouldn't be surprised if Sanders doesn't get picked tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's not normal in the NFL draft. It's especially with these high profile guys.
Yep.
And Sanders is a high profile guy. So to me, he's the most intriguing pick for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
From Cleveland to not being picked at all, his fantasy value can fly up the ranks and he can dip down to the deepest crevice it can find.
Right.
It's just so intriguing. I don't even care where he goes. Like, I am just intrigued by where he lands tomorrow night. Right.
Yeah. And he, like you said, he could very well have zero fantasy value whatsoever for next season. He could end up going somewhere where he's not going to get a shot at starting at all this year. And it's, it is interesting because PFF has him mocked at 2 today, but his ADP is way higher than that. And they have him ranked as not even a first round talent, not even close to first round talent from, just from a standpoint of if they were just lining up all the best players. So it's super interesting. I think Shedeur's tough. I like that he's, he stood in there with a terrible offensive line last year and played through it. I think he's got some nice touch. He's decently accurate, even at second, third levels. Like, he's not a bad quarterback. Don't like the arm strength. Don't see much from a scrambling, like rushing ability upside, especially from a fantasy standpoint. So I'm not super excited. It does seem to make sense. Like, if I'm Cleveland, there's no way I'm taking him at 2, even though they're desperate for quarterback, because Travis Hunter is such a unique talent that shouldn't even be falling to them at 2. So that would be crazy to me if they took Shedeur Sanders there. going to Pittsburgh at 21 makes some sense in the sense that Pittsburgh does also need a quarterback. And so if they're going to give anyone a shot, why not? It's just hard to spend first round draft capital on a guy that I think a lot of people are not sure can, be successful as a quarterback in the NFL. So it's a real intriguing thing. I don't know where to put him because I don't know if I wouldn't put him in the first round at all this year if I was saying in terms of where he is talent wise personally.
Yeah, and I think that Cleveland has a lot more issues than quarterback. They have a quarterback issue, and
right.
I think Travis Hunter could fix a lot of those. Not a lot of those issues, excuse me, but I think Travis Hunter could fix some of those issues, and you could punt quarterback off. You could even just tank for another year and go after Quinn Ewers next year.
Yeah.
I mean, if Quinn Ewers was in this draft, I don't think we'd even be talking about Shedeur Sanders as a potential second overall pick.
No.
I just don't believe that. So,
right.
You could just take the best available player, see what this year brings, and go after a guy like Quinn Ewers next year, and not even deal with Sanders. So yeah, I think that we've kind of beat that dead horse. It's really just a matter of where he lands.
Yep,
that's going to be a big deal, and I think that's going to matter too of whether or not he plays this year or not.
Right.
I think under Mike Tomlin, he could play this year, and he could be fine and fantasy relevant. But if he goes. Say he goes to New York for the Giants. Maybe it's tomorrow or excuse me, Friday at the beginning of the second round. He goes to New York. I don't know. I don't think he plays this year. I think they use the quarterbacks they brought in. They let Sanders sit for a year, and then they bring him in. So, not Quinn Ewers. I didn't mean Quinn Ewers. Actually, I think Quinn Ewers, I meant Manning, not Ewers.
Oh, Arch Manning.
Yeah, I meant the Manning kid, the Texas kid, which Ewers was. But anyways, that's what I was talking about. Let's move on to Jackson Dart here. Consensus third potentially overall quarterback from a fantasy standpoint. Him and Jalen Milroe are probably kind of similar in terms of where they could be drafted, also in terms of fantasy value and where they could be drafted in fantasy. For me, when we talk about Cam Ward and his ability to really Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, they both can make great plays. They can turn broken plays into big plays. Jackson Dart's the one that comes in with the rushing yards. Over 600 yards rushing as a sophomore, nearly 500 yards rushing last year. His breakout age was only 19 years old when he was a sophomore. He has been there. Another 4-year guy. Didn't bounce around school to school as much as Cam Ward did. But I don't mind Jackson Dart. I kind of like the athleticism he could bring to the quarterback position. But I do think him and Milroe are both at least 1 year guys. Like, you're going to wait a year. That's how I peg them right now. Now, I thought the same about Bo Nix, and look what he came right in and performed well. So in the right spot with the right head coach, maybe he can get on the field this year. But right now, I would look at Jackson Dart as you're going to draft him this year, but he's going to be on your bench or in your
taxi squad.
In your taxi squad and waiting until next year.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with both of them. I like the rushing upside. I think if Jalen Milroe, especially if he gets some starts or if he gets a chance to start for a season or two, I think regardless of team or situation, he becomes fantasy relevant just because of the rushing upside and the fact that he's so good at that. So if he can get on the field for a full season, I think he's great. Made a good point about Jackson Dart and his rushing yards too. And he from what I've seen of Jackson Dart, he looks good too. But for these guys, it's very simple. They're probably not starting this year at all. And so you've got to wait. If you're in Dynasty, for sure, take them. When you start to look at a bunch of guys that you're not sure have any ceiling, then you take these guys, right? But otherwise, don't overpay. Don't try to talk yourself into the fact that they're both or one of them is going to get a starting job this year. They might with injury, you never know, but you can't plan for that yet because they shouldn't be going anywhere near the first round or second. So
Tyler says he thinks that Dart and Milroe, that's who I assume he meant, will have a better career than Ward and Sanders. Honestly, sometimes being the third or fourth or fifth quarterback off the board and the second round pick versus the 101 helps.
Yep.
Teams are more willing to let you progress and learn and sit the bench before you are elevated into that role. So
and there's a lot of
opportunity, but I think fantasy value wise, like you mentioned, like they're going to bring their legs. And so if they're on the field, they're going to have fantasy. Bo Nix had fantasy value because he ran in for 4 touchdowns, or 6 touchdowns last year, right? Like if a quarterback's using his legs, as we all know, and we say it so much on this show, that's going to bring some great fantasy value that you're not necessarily always going to get. Yep. You can get it with Cam Ward and you can get it with Sanders as well, a little bit. Sanders likes more of the deep throws, the flashy throws, the on the run type of stuff, but he can use his legs. So all 4 of these guys potentially, but I think Milroe and Dart use it more for rushing and less for scrambling.
And I would say that the interesting thing about Dart is that he's not climbing up any board. Or hear somebody talking about Jackson Dart. Everyone loves Jackson Dart. So I think he'll probably get a chance somewhere. It'll be really interesting to see where he's drafted. If he's drafted to a team that has an aging, like an older quarterback that he might get in from like after a year or two. It'd be really interesting.
Like the Giants, I brought them up earlier in the second round.
Yeah.
Somewhere like that with his. They don't want to spend the first round pick on a guy like Shedeur Sanders.
Right.
So they take best available, Abdul Carter or Hunter, whoever's there. Just take the best available and then go get your quarterback in the second round and allow Justin Fields or Russ Wilson to be the guy, or not Fields. Jameson Williams was Field last year. Allow Jameson or Russ to be the guy this year, and then put him in next year. So could be a good landing spot, something like that.
To be fair, Justin Fields is in New York. He's going to lead the Jets. He's going to lead the Jets to success with a guy that we're going to talk about coming up. So previewing or teasing a little bit.
I think that's probably it for quarterbacks. There's not really much else here in the quarterback ring. You got deep leagues. You're probably going to throw some guys out there towards the end of your drafts. The Quinn Ewers, as previously mentioned, but nothing great. The K-State great, Will Howard, the Ohio State national champion.
Yep.
Not fantasy relevant for us.
Tyler Shuck or whatever, the Louisville kid is. I hear his name a little bit here and there, but nothing that would suggest he's going to get taken with a chance to get in on the field this year.
He's no Lamar Jackson coming out of Louisville. So
no.
Let's move on to wide receiver. My favorite position when it comes to fantasy football. It's weird. It is weird. I kind of mentioned it at the top. Like, normally, my argument is how many wide receivers before you can take a running back.
Yep.
And it's just not the case right now, especially with Ashton Genty. But there are some wide receivers, and there are some good wide receivers out there. Let's start with the first one, who's a wide receiver / cornerback. Everybody knows him, the Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter. He's either going to go to Cleveland or New York Giants, right? Like, he's not falling past.
No, there's no way.
And from a fantasy standpoint, I think people are going to draft him pretty high. I don't think the NFL is necessarily drafting him to be an every down wide receiver. Not to say they can't use him, but I would assume they're actually bringing him on to be a lockdown corner, maybe a punt returner or kick returner type specialist, and potentially a gadget guy worked in on offense. How do you see Travis Hunter fitting in offensively? So obviously, so it's a fantasy relevant.
Yeah, I mean, if like tomorrow, if he gets drafted by Cleveland and then like training camp starts and he's only really being seen on the offensive side of the ball, then I'm going to get excited about Travis Hunter because he's a unique talent, generational talent, and he's awesome. And he's going to be a great receiver if he gets to play that. But for fantasy purposes, if a team is going to utilize both sides of the ball, if he's going to be in some nickel and dime packages, or if he's going to be an outside corner for a certain percentage of the game, they're just naturally, they're not going to want their top pick to be on every single play on both sides of the ball. So he's going to miss out on targets. He's going to miss out on routes. And for fantasy purposes, at least for me, I don't play IDP really. So that means that his value just plummets, which is a really big bummer because if he was just a wide receiver, he'd be the first one taken and we'd all be excited about him and it'd be like, it'd be quite simple. But until we know what his role is, and I keep hearing things where people say, well, I heard that he's going to be more of a receiver, but then the second you hear that, you hear, well, maybe he's going to be more of a corner, and maybe it'll depend on the team. Like, if he goes at second overall to Cleveland, you look at Cleveland, a team that's got a good defense already. It's got really good secondary players already. So you want to be hopeful that, okay, well, if Cleveland takes him, they're for sure going to use him as an offensive weapon. That would only make sense, but it's Cleveland. And he's also, you're taking a guy that basically gives you a 2-for-1. You have all these options. So why wouldn't you explore both? So it's a unique situation that at least I'm not used to having to deal with. And so it's going to temper how high I consider him. But if there's any inclination that he's going to be primarily a receiver, then I'm all about that. Right.
Yeah.
And if, like you mentioned, if he's employed as a returner and the kickoff rules continue to change and is the touchback line moving up again? Like, they're really trying to foster more returns, like in, some DSTs in some leagues and, him as a return. If he gets that role, like for sure, then he's going to have even more value, but there's just too many question marks, which is a bummer because as a prospect, usually the question marks are that is he going to translate to the NFL? This one is not that question. This one is he's going to be great, but he may not play the position we need him to play. It's such a weird thing. It's not like Taysom Hill where you can put him in at tight end and get all of his quarterback points.
Yeah, right.
Like it's not one of those cheat codes. You have to hope he gets on the field on offense.
He will be a cheat code for IDP leagues, though. You did bring that up. I am in a one IDP dynasty league, and I would assume he has to be the 101.
Yeah.
Just because of that opportunity to where you just put him in your cornerback slot and hope that you get some wide receiver points.
Yep.
Or offensive points somehow with it as well. And really, as a wide receiver, he's probably arguably the best wide receiver in the draft. I mean, Ted McMillan isn't a pro. Like he looks like he's already a pro. So he is probably the best. But I watched Travis Hunter bring some of those balls in, and it was wild. And so he has like Odell Beckham type vibes when he was like a rookie and sophomore, right?
Yep.
So I think you could definitely have an argument for being one of the best wide receivers in the draft class. Right now, I'm looking at the DLF Dynasty League football rankings for Superflex, and they've got him at number 6 overall. And I just don't know if I can feel confident enough. If my draft starts on Monday, which drafts do start Monday, rookie drafts, we dive into these things in the month of May, right?
Yep.
I just don't know if I would be confident enough to say, yes, he's going to get enough offensive play that I need to spend a top 6 pick on it.
Right.
I think I would rather maybe closer to 10 or 12 towards the back end of that first round.
I was just going to say, for me, I think only if I'm in a dynasty league where, I've been rebuilding or I've been trying to stockpile picks and maybe I have the 105, the 108, and the 212 or the 202 or something like that. Like
That's a great point. Yeah.
Like if I have a few picks near the top end because I've been trading assets to try to rebuild, then I'm for sure considering him with one of those later ones. But yeah, if I just had a good season last year, finished third, and I have the 109, and that's my only first round pick, that's a tough question for me. I might still consider it for sure. But especially knowing if it's on Monday, we know where people are. Like I might be able to talk myself into it, but still, like you said, that's a scary value to put on a guy who may not even play, depending on your league format settings.
Yeah, don't even know if you're going to get anything out of him. Let's talk about a guy we do know will be playing on the offensive side of the ball.
Yep.
I almost said Tet McMillan. It looks like I have Matthew Golden written down next, which is fine.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter what order we're going in. Matthew Golden, mocked mid to late first round overall pick here. I like this kid as a prospect. I think he has great talent. I believe that he could be the best wide receiver at the end of the day in this class. I think he has the upside for that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's the best right now. I think Tet McMillan is clearly the best. He'll probably be a top 5 pick, if not top 8. I think Matthew Golden could be in that conversation. It takes me back to the Jefferson days when the cat from Denver got drafted. Jared Judy got drafted. Yep. I believe he was in the same. Like there was a couple of those guys.
Jalen Reagor
with the Eagles. Yeah. Was that the same one? The Raiders took the really fast guy.
Henry Ruggs.
Ruggs. Was that all? So I remember this draft, and I remember our fantasy drafts after that, and all the conversation was like, who are you taking first? Maybe CeeDee Lamb was in that. Anyways.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jefferson has come out as like the top dog from all of those guys, but he wasn't a consensus like you have to take him over the rest of the guys. I think that's how come June, these guys are going to be bunched up even more, I believe, especially depending on landing spots and draft capital, of course.
Yep.
And I think Matthew Golden has a chance 2 to 3 years down the road being like, wow, why were we drafting this guy as the 3rd or 4th wide receiver and not the 1st wide receiver? What are your thoughts on Matthew Golden here going into tomorrow?
I was going to say, I'm glad you had him first. I have, but it's kind of an unpopular opinion. I already like him better than Tet McMillan personally. And I know that that's not where the rankings are, but Simon and I did our consensus big board a couple weeks ago. And I made a point to put Golden one spot higher than Tet McMillan on my list. Like I think Tet McMillan's great. You can't ignore the frame, 6'5", 220. Like he's gonna win every 50-50 ball. He's got great long stride speed in open space. Like Tet McMillan is going to be great. And there's a lot of teams I can see that would be grateful to have him. Matthew Golden passes my eye test for whatever that's worth, if anyone values my eye test. His timing when he jumps to catch, like he's only 6 foot tall, but he's got some returning chops as well, by the way, but he still manages to high point everything. And his catching motion is so natural. He reminds me of like some of my favorite kind of recent receivers that just seem to catch everything. Brian Thomas Jr., Terry McLaurin, guys that are just so sure-handed and durable. Like I think Golden is going to be great. And it's funny. I think Tyler is in the chat here. Tet McMillan to Dallas. That's actually my favorite Matthew Golden landing spot because as much as I dislike the Cowboys, I think Matthew Golden, CeeDee Lamb in a Dallas offense could be really exciting and for fantasy purposes. But to Tyler's comment as well, Tet McMillan would also help that too. I mean, Dallas has needed a wide receiver too for years now, but I just like Matthew Golden. I like his skill set. I think he's a little bit more dynamic, whereas Tet McMillan's really good at what he does. But I mean, you can't really go wrong with either of them. I think my personal preference is Golden though, so that's why I like him at 12 for Dallas. Even though I see him kind of later mocks, I've seen him kind of fall into the 20s. Like I've seen Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State getting taken ahead of him a lot of the time. Luther Burden is getting taken ahead a lot of the time, and those are both good receivers too. I just like Matthew Golden better than both of them. So it's interesting to me. But yeah, it's one of like you said, there's going to be the bunch of receivers. It could be like I remember the year that my Vikings took Jordan Addison. There was 4 receivers taken in that early part of the 20s. It was Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, a couple. I can't remember who else now off the top of my head, but they do tend to get bunched up when teams start to feel like they're missing out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to some of these receivers in the latter half of the first round. So.
Yeah, it's like one of them goes and they all go.
Oh no, we need one too.
Yeah, that's always fun. Yeah, speaking of Quentin Johnston, I think the Chargers could be a really fun spot for a guy like Matthew Golden. QJ not really working out the way they want to, although had a better season last year.
Yeah,
but with Ladd, and I mean, could you? I could just imagine, right? Like
and
our boy Ladd just helped us a little bit in the playoffs,
Ladd
to put him on the other side of Matthew Golden, you have to think going into the preseason next year, everybody's going to be trying to figure out how to scheme against Ladd because of how hot he ended the year.
Yeah.
And you've got to add a little offense around him, and bringing a guy like Matthew Golden in could be phenomenal for that Chargers team. And they're sitting at early 20s.
Yep.
In that range. And so that's probably the range he ends up going anyway. So it could potentially be a good match there.
But the Chargers don't need a receiver, Trevor, because I just saw on their depth chart that they have Jalen Rager. So that's
true. I mean, he's probably. I mean, Jalen Rager, Quentin Johnston. They probably got Jerry Jeudy again.
Yep, that's right.
Just the time. So that would be my favorite. I would love Golden there in Dallas. I think any wide receiver in Dallas is going to be great for that wide receiver's fantasy value. So if it is Tet McMillan, as Tyler mentions here in the chat with T-Mac to Dallas, if it is Tet McMillan, again, I think anybody going to Dallas is going running back or wide receiver. It's going to help their fantasy value. That is an offense that we like, an offense that succeeds for fantasy. Doesn't matter what the product on the field, doesn't matter the wins and losses. They put out good fantasy value for us in the fantasy football world. So let's talk Tet McMillan. I mean, the wide receivers, they're all over. We just talked about Golden going to Dallas early and the Chargers late. Tet McMillan's very similar. It's just he's higher, right? So he's going as early as 5 or 6. I've seen some conversations around the Patriots pick, whether it's going to be him or the Patriots trade out to get him. I've seen, I know that most people are putting a tight end to the Jets, but maybe it would make sense for them to bring in another wide receiver as well. Maybe not, but it could be there. So there's some teams at the top here that could take him. And if they don't pull the trigger, I could see him falling to number 12 to Dallas.
Yeah.
I could see him falling to 16 to Arizona, something like that. So the wide receivers are being mocked all over the place. What do you think the worst spot for Tet McMillan from a fantasy value standpoint? What would hurt it the most? Right now, most people are calling him the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. What would hurt it? What could push that down?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking front end of the draft, like I think I'm a little bit biased. Like I don't want him to go to Jacksonville. At top 5, like even though you could argue him opposite side of Brian Thomas Jr., like that's some nice weapons,
that would
right?
Be sick.
But part of the Brian Thomas Jr.'s appeal, and I'm an owner of him in a couple leagues, like is he gets all the targets, and you don't want anyone to try to divide targets, right?
Yep.
The Giants at 3, there's no reason they should be taking him. There's a little bit of appeal with, someone like Russ Wilson who can push the ball deep to Tet McMillan. But again, you're taking away from Neighbors, you're taking away from Tracy. I just don't like that from a fantasy standpoint. The Raiders are kind of interesting, but that doesn't do a whole lot for me. I mean, I don't like him to like the Panthers either. They have they have like the 8th pick right now, just because Bryce Young's still a question mark. They already have a few young rookie receivers that kind of splashed last year. You don't want to muddy that up, and the Saints scare me for everybody. Like
we don't even know who their quarterback's gonna be now.
Exactly, and they have
all
Chris
this
Olave.
reporting on Derek Carr. Might not even. What happened?
So I don't want any of my favorite skill guys to go to the Saints.
Just pick a right tackle.
Yes,
and just move on. Just keep us fantasy guys.
Yes,
safe.
Because the Saints are so frustrating. They've been in cap hell for like a decade plus, and they just keep putting Band-Aids on things. They need to draft best player available in the trenches. They need to build up from the bottom.
A defensive nose tackle, and just
don't take Tet McMillan at 9 and ruin everybody's good day. Just don't do it.
Just turns off the TV. This is crap.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially with the Derek Carr stuff.
Yeah.
My pick for worse, I think, is the Patriots.
Oh, okay.
And mostly because, well, what are they going to do on offense?
Yeah.
They want to run the ball still, even to this day. That's their offense. And last year, I think they used like 8 different receivers, it seemed like, on a daily basis. And it's just like they have a lot of mediocrity in New England right now.
Yeah. New England.
Why they have a top 5 pick.
Right. They're weird to me because when I've done some mock drafts and they're at 4 and Tet's sitting there and I'm like, oh, Drake May's exciting. And they brought in Stephon Diggs, but he can't carry a receiving core on his own. Like, that's kind of exciting to get Tet McMillan, but kind of the same thing we were just talking about the Saints. Like, the Patriots still need to build up the trenches. They should be taking a solid offensive lineman. And Drake May, one of his exciting stats from last year is he threw like 10 touchdown passes at 10 different receivers. Like you said, he was all over the place. And that's actually a good thing for a young quarterback if they can learn how to do that. So I don't know if they need to try to start force feeding someone. So I don't think they would for fantasy. So I don't like him to the Patriots either. It doesn't really, Patriots need to prove that they have an offense again more consistently before we can get excited about players going there, I think.
I believe the report I saw was that the Patriots were going to trade out if Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter were already drafted.
Right.
So essentially, if Shador Sanders doesn't go to Cleveland,
right,
then the Patriots are going to, I think or they were expected to trade out.
Yeah.
So it probably won't be the Patriots, but still would not like Tet McMillan to go to New England. Let's talk about a guy who we might see tomorrow night. And we might not. He's kind of being mocked in that mid-20s to mid-30s range, late first, early second. Luther Burden, the third out of Mizzou. Kind of a different style of wide receiver than a guy like Tet McMillan. Clearly different than Tet McMillan, who's more of a pro type of wide receiver. What do you think about Luther Burden? Before we get into that, I think he could be a great asset, a great weapon to these teams who are already really good, right? Maybe not the Eagles, probably not the Chiefs, but the Bills and the Ravens and like these teams who are there each and every year. And then you get a guy like Luther Burden, the talent's definitely there. Talk to me about this guy.
Yeah, he feels a little bit more gadgety. He feels a little bit more specific to the slot, which makes his value to me a little bit lower than a guy like Tet, who's like a bona fide X receiver, and a Matthew Golden, who I think is a little bit more well-rounded in terms of playing all over the field. That being said, Luther Burden is very, very good, and he is going to make a team better, the receiving core. But I like it. I like him going to a team where you kind of have a different type of receiver or a couple different receivers that are established. Like the Niners are an interesting spot for a guy like Luther Burden. No longer having Deebo Samuel, I think he could fit in there and be another weapon. I don't know if they need another weapon necessarily. They took Pearsall last year and they still have Brandon Ayuk, but I feel like that would be a pretty fearsome receiving core. I like him to the Falcons, to kind of join up with Drake London and be an option for Penix over the middle. I don't mind the Jags. I know I just said I don't want Tet McMillan going with Brian Thomas, but I think Luther Burden's different enough where he wouldn't steal too much from BTJ. And honestly, the other team I like a little bit, if we're the Titans and we're trying to make Cam Ward work, we have Calvin Ridley. Why not see if Luther Burden falls to the early second and we take I don't know if he will. He's been mocked a lot in the first round, but if Luther Burden somehow falls or if Tennessee trades back in, I don't mind them picking up a really solid weapon that he will be effective at what he's good at for your young quarterback, right? So you got Ridley, you got Burden, you got Chigo Okonkwo, and you got a couple nice running backs, and they've been working on their offensive line a little bit past couple drafts. Like Tennessee could put together some talent here this year and see what happens with their rookie quarterback. So I wouldn't hate that. But yeah, I don't like him going to I definitely don't like him as like a top receiver for a team. Like he's got to be a wide receiver 2 or a specialty guy kind of thing. I that's the sense I get, at least. I think he can be very productive, but I think he needs an offense around him that's going to be pretty prolific in general.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's honestly why I think that one of those really good teams already would be perfect for him.
Yeah, for sure.
That could use him. But you brought up a good point with the Titans. This is something we've seen out of a couple of teams over the last couple of years where they'll take their quarterback and then they'll take quarterback's favorite wide receiver, and almost kind of give the quarterback an opportunity to kind of talk about who they want, whether it's somebody they trust, somebody they've, played 7-on-7 with or gone to camps with or whatnot. So not a bad idea if you're going to get your franchise quarterback, to go ahead and give him one of his favorite weapons. And I don't know if that is the case with Cam Ward and Luther Burden, but I think that whether it's Luther Burden, whether it's Egbuka, one of these other guys, like it could, that could be a play for the Titans, and it would make a lot of sense for the Titans to do that in the first and the second round, or the first and trade back in to the late first round there. Moving on to Emeka Egbuka, over 1,000 yards last year at Ohio State, 80 receptions. Really stood out last year, double-digit touchdowns. Obviously, this offense was very high-flying. It was a prototypical college air raid, or not air raid, but like spread type of offense. Explosion plays after explosion plays. Over 20% target share for the second time in his career. He broke out when he was 19 years old as a sophomore when he had a 25% target share. The guy has been great. Had a little bit of a dip his junior year. You may have heard of the guy that was there, Marvin Harrison Jr. And so he's gone to the NFL, and Egbuka shows up and shows out once more.
Yep.
Late first round, early second round, that same kind of range that Luther Burden has been showing. I think while Burden has always kind of been a better prospect, had better scores, those kind of things, I think Egbuka has a high ceiling and potentially higher than Luther Burden. We'll have to see as the years go on. But what do you think about Emeka Egbuka?
I mean, an Ohio State wide receiver who's been prolific is always going to be a sought-after commodity. It's like Ohio State and LSU. I mean, if you're drafting a receiver from one of those schools, you're probably feeling pretty good.
Yep.
But no, I don't know if he has any like elite physical or athletic traits necessarily, but he is a very, very good receiver, and he's very well polished, and I think he's going to be great, like you mentioned. I think I'm going to be real intrigued if he gets drafted by like the Texans at 25. If he somehow falls to 25, Tank Dell is still battling back from an knee injury.
Yeah,
he's been
terrible injury. Right? I think it was late in the year.
Yes, and so it sucks because we all love Tank Dell, but who knows how much we're going to see this year, if at all. They brought in Christian.
And is he the same after the injury coming back?
100%. And they brought in Christian Kirk, who's a proven guy, but not someone you're going to build around now for a young and upcoming team. So you have Nico Collins as your wide receiver 1. I think that Ohio State connection, CJ Stroud and Emeka Egbuka, I kind of like that setup for fantasy as well. I mean, Houston's got a really solid defense, and I just heard a report that CJ Stroud's going to be given more pre-snap decision-making like responsibilities or something. Like they're going to kind of let him take the next step as a developed quarterback, his third year in the league. And I think he could use another weapon, and what better than a weapon from his alma mater, who, like you said, had a dip the year that he was competing for targets with, Marvin Harrison Jr. And everyone's going to lose out and not have as productive of a year there. So,
but Stroud was there his sophomore year, Emeka's sophomore year, right? That would have been Stroud's last year at Ohio State.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Which is when he broke out and had 100 targets and 800 yards. And so.
Yeah. So that would be my ideal spot. And then, but yeah, I like him for sure. I think he's an NFL ready receiver. I don't know if he's going to like blow anybody out of the water in terms of like athleticism, speed necessarily, but he's going to be effective. And if he gets into the right spot, he's going to produce for fantasy. So.
Yeah, it could be a great, like the picture you just painted with like bringing in Christian Kirk after moving on from Steph Diggs, and bringing in Ibuka to kind of replace Tank Dell, like that makes like the positioning that all of those three guys with Collins and Ibuka and Christian Kirk play, like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You're not going. You're not competing with each other. You're all in a different part of the field, and that's exactly how it was last year. Which is why some games Steph Diggs had a phenomenal game with 6-7 catches because they were playing a zone or whatnot, and Nico would always get his. But then other games, if they left Tank Dell 1-on-1, he would just win, and would find him. Like Egbuka could probably just win 1-on-1. Maybe not the deep 40-yard bombs that Tank Dell would catch, but still the run after catch is still there for Egbuka. So, could be a good spot for this wide receiver here. Before we move on to tight ends, if you're on Twitter, thank you for watching. We do appreciate it. Come on over to YouTube. Come to YouTube, Bite Size Sports, on the YouTube channel. You can comment on Twitter just as you can comment on YouTube, but it's a little bit cleaner if you come over to YouTube, and it's a little easier to comment. So come on over there, join the chat, and we will read your chats on the screen. We're going to get to, a couple questions here momentarily about landing spots, but let's talk about three tight ends quickly. You kind of mentioned the first one at the top, Tyler Warren. Everybody is mocking him to 7 to the Jets. It's almost like we know Cam Ward's going number 1, and we know Tyler Warren's going number 7. Right? Like everything else, who knows? Yeah. Those two things feel very, very sticky right now. Yes. What do you think about Tyler Warren? Is this going to be a tight end we all seek since he's going to be drafted in the top 10?
I think so. It might be part of my fantasy brain saying that the Jets really do need a tight end, and he's a top 10 talent. He's not Brock Bowers level. Brock Bowers is a different player, but Tyler Warren is great. And just if you watch how many different spots he lines up on the field, like he is going to be out there with schemes developed for him. He's going to be getting handoffs and shovel passes, and they're going to design plays to get him the ball. He might throw one or something. He needs to work on his blocking and stuff to really stay on the field all the time. But what better to go to the Jets? They brought in Justin Fields. They need to spark some excitement there. It's going to be a little bit rough around the edges. But you had Garrett Wilson outside, and they got Tyler Warren as a safety blanket. And he's a big dude that's hard to break down too. And he just looks really exciting. And so I guess for me, I've mocked him to the Jets, and when I saw that other people were also mocking to the Jets, I was like, yes, everyone understands the Jets need a tight end, and he's the best one. Let's get him. But I would be very disappointed if another team who has an established receiving tight end gets him for fantasy purposes, because then I don't know. I'm just going to be kind of bummed out because because I feel like Ben Sinnott from last year is a guy I kind of missed on, I guess. I thought he was going to come in and be like a really top level receiving option. And Zach Ertz took all the targets in Washington from Jaden Daniels. And so Ben Sinnott might still be good, but I thought he was going to have an immediate impact last year, and he didn't. But I have a similar feeling, but a much better prospect here with Tyler Warren. I think a team that drafts him should be drafting him with the design of he's going to play the majority of tight end snaps, and we're going to get him, like, make him be target option one on a number of different plays, especially for Justin Fields, who's going to need some confidence boost, short passes over the middle to get rolling, you would think. So I'm very excited if he goes to the Jets. If he goes elsewhere, I'm not as excited, but I think he's also a good enough prospect where he'll probably be worth it anywhere to be considering.
Yeah, huge year last year, over 1,200 yards receiving. That's pretty big for a tight end. 76% catch rate. That's wild.
Yeah,
I mean that's just unheard of. For me, my only knock on the Tyler Warrens right now is I don't, even if he goes to the Jets. So he goes to the Jets. Like, what are you dealing with? Now you're dealing with Justin Fields in his third team in 3 years.
Yeah.
And you're also dealing with Garrett Wilson, and you're also dealing with a phenomenal run game and just a overall team that's built around running the football and throwing to Garrett Wilson. And the tight end would be huge for that, right? Because it's the play action pass over the middle, stuff like that. So you definitely want that. But as you kind of mentioned, the blocking. And so if you're going to be in for play action pass, you also have to be able to be in for the run game.
Yep.
Not that he'll necessarily lose time on the field. So I say all that to say, I still like the wide receivers better than Tyler Warren, even in a tight end premium type of league. If you're desperate at tight end or you're stacked at wide receiver, yes, for sure. Go ahead. Take Tyler Warren over these wide receivers. But as I look at, I got the DLF rankings pulled up right here. I mean, these guys got him as high as 4. Overall, they have him as 8. And I'm just, there's no, like, I'd rather have Burton and Agbuka and Matthew Golden. Like, I'd rather have these wide receivers over this tight end. I don't think he's that great.
Yeah.
But I think what's happened is a recency bias has, well, yeah, but look what Kyle Pitts did his rookie year.
Yeah.
Look what Trey McBride did his rookie year.
Yeah.
Look, who's the Raiders tight end?
Brock Bowers.
Brock Bowers. Look what he did. So I think there's a little bit of recency bias kind of creeping into us fantasy football guys.
Yep.
And here we go. Here's another, pass catching tight end. Maybe he will be. Maybe his profile will turn out to be like those guys. But right now, I'm just not totally bought in to the idea to be taking him that high.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think before the recency stuff you were mentioning, it was pretty standard to, like, okay, you're going to draft a rookie tight end, and it's usually like year 2 or 3 where he starts to come into his own and become an asset. Like, it's year 3 where he starts to be that elite tight end. And then we had a few guys do it their first year. Kyle Pitts' first year, you mentioned Sam Laporta, Brock Bowers, like, those guys come in, and all of a sudden now it's like, okay, so if they're elite talent enough, yeah, we got to take them earlier.
Yep.
I think that's a fair point for sure. With Tyler Warren, he's my tight end 1 in this draft, and if you like I said, if you need a tight end, but I do understand I'm probably talking myself into him a little bit because I'm also counting on the Jets to have a consistently competent offense, which isn't always something you want to count on.
Look, I like Justin Fields more than I like 45-year-old Aaron Rodgers, so.
That's true.
I do think they actually upgraded at quarterback.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is weird. I think pre-Achilles, I think Aaron Rodgers would have been fine there. But yeah, now I think that was an actual upgrade.
For sure.
All right, 2 other tight ends. One that I guess we're going to see him in the first round as well. Colson Loveland out of Michigan.
Yep.
being kind of mocked in the mid rounds we have here, like the Colts are kind of a team that people are kind of tying this guy to. They're at, what are they, 14?
Yep.
PFF has him mocked to the Rams at 26. So a couple decent landing spots if he were to land at either of those two places. I don't know as much about Loveland, so I'll kind of let you speak on Colston Loveland here.
Yeah, to me, he feels like he's less of a ceiling as a more well-rounded tight end and more of that like big receiving type. Like he reminds me of like the classic. He's tight end, but he's really just a big receiver, and he's really great at receiving. But he needs even more work in the blocking, even more work with the inline stuff, and being more of a versatile tight end overall, which makes me a little nervous with him going forward. And so I had him initially. He wasn't even in the first round for me for a while. But there's some people that like him better than Tyler Warren, and there are a lot of people that like him in that middle range. I've seen him to the Colts a bunch too. I like the Rams as an option as well. And I do think Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, whichever stud quarterback gets to take snaps in Indianapolis, I think they're going to need a better option than, Andrew Ogletree, I think, is top of their depth chart right now. So I do like that as a landing spot, and the Colts need a weapon like that. I feel like 14 is too high though. And I think that from a fantasy standpoint, it's going to be dependent on if he's on the field, which I think if you're drafting him in the first round, he will be. So I don't think you have to worry too much, but I do think that the blocking and being able to be in line is going to be more of a liability initially than Tyler Warren, which means he might be, slightly less snap percentage his rookie year. So if you're drafting him for this year, a little bit of a different story. If you're drafting him for a dynasty league, then I think definitely at least a top 3 tight end in this class, and it, wherever the ADP falls, if you don't like what's around, I think you can definitely go for it and put him on your team because he's a great big target as a receiver, and he's going to be really effective in the NFL, assuming he's there getting a lot of routes, getting a lot of targets. So
maybe a little Trey McBride, but with some touchdowns.
Yeah, that would be,
the first couple of years,
that'd be nice.
There's a couple other tight ends here: Mason Taylor, Harold Fannin, Elijah Arroyo. You wrote down Elijah Arroyo, so I'll let you kind of talk about him real quick. I think all 3 of these guys, at the end of the day, are probably like third round. Take a shot, see what happens, or we'll see what happens over the weekend. They might find phenomenal landing spots and move up, but I would say right now they're probably in that third round, final draft, final picks or early pickups of free agency, whatever the case may be. Take a dart throw, but talk about Arroyo.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better than a dart throw for me, but still close to a dart throw. Like when you're drafting, you're not going to prioritize Elijah Arroyo, but he's 6'5", 250. He's such a raw talent, and I think he has a ceiling to be crazy good. So if he does get to that right situation, he's someone I'm going to keep an eye on. And in deeper leagues, or like you said, dynasty leagues, if we have some open roster spots, a good taxi squad guy probably. But I think from a ceiling standpoint, he could be as good as anyone in this draft a couple of years from now. I have a hard time saying he'll be really great for redraft this year. That being said, if you're doing your draft right after the NFL draft and you have a roster spot for a dart throw, take it, see what happens over training camp. He might kind of explode. He's got all the natural gifts he wants. He just needs to be a little bit more refined and coached up. And then it's funny I think you mentioned Harold Fannin's name. He had a crazy year last year, and a fellow Chiefs guy really likes him that I listened to, Heath Cummings at CBS Sports. I listened to him and some of his Dynasty podcast stuff, and he's pretty on board with the idea of Harold Fannin coming in and learning under Kelsey for a year and then taking the reins at tight end for your Chiefs. I don't know how you feel about that, but
anybody coming in for a year to take the reins would be nice. I mean, honestly, like I like Noah Gray has always been fine, but he's not.
Right.
He's been there for like 8 years now, and obviously not going to be taking any steps forward. So you find a guy at the end of the second round or into the third round, and you can take a guy that can sit there for a year,
right,
and learn and get involved in the action. And I mean, Kelsey's not going to play 100% of the snaps by any means this year. So
Right.
Yeah, that would be Harold Fannin would be a fun one.
He had over 1,500 receiving yards and 117 receptions last year. That's crazy.
He would be. I mean, obviously the top two guys. I mean, Mason Taylor would be. I think would be fine too. But I think as far as where the NFL, where they're projected to be drafted, I think a guy like Fannin makes more sense because you don't want to spend too much draft capital on a tight end that you're expecting to kind of play behind a Hall of Famer for a year. It's not like it's not your quarterback that's going to be there forever. It's a tight end, so you don't want to spend too much draft capital there. But that would be fun
for sure.
All right, let's get in. We got 3 quick questions we want to kind of touch on here. If you are on Twitter or on YouTube, on Facebook, let us know who you're most interested in seeing, what their landing spot is going to be tomorrow night. Again, we know where Cam Ward's going to be, and we might know where Tyler Warren's going to be, but we're going to talk about who are you most interested in seeing where they land tomorrow night. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to start at the top with Ashton Jeanty. And the reason I'm excited to see this landing, I mean, he's locked in at the 101. We're not changing that. But I want to know, like, is he going to go to a team that's going to be good enough to utilize Jeanty in the correct way? Is it going to be a cowbell? Is he going to be in a committee? Is his value going to change at all in terms of, like, maybe it gets a little closer, maybe maybe he further becomes the 101 and everybody else is like, doesn't really matter. That's kind of what it feels like right now. Does anybody else close the gap because Jeanty goes to a place that you weren't really expecting? So the Raiders, the Jaguars, we talked all about it. Like, I'm interested to see who's going to be the team to first pull the trigger and say, I want this guy. He's a game changer, and he makes our entire team better right off the cusp. So interested to see where Ashton Jeanty goes. Tyler says Travis Hunter. Agree. I mean, I think the thing with Travis Hunter is, like, it kind of ties into Shadur Sanders, right? Either Hunter's going number 2 to Cleveland or Sanders is going to number 2 to Cleveland. So I can see why that could be intriguing. But Josh, who are you most excited to kind of see their landing spot for tomorrow?
I'm going to stick with my guy, Matthew Golden, who I think is my favorite receiver of this draft. And I want to see, and again, this is me trying to be my own personal preference here, but I'm excited to see if he goes to Dallas. He probably won't. That's a really, like, specific thing to hope for. But I'll be excited to see where he goes because I do think that he'll be a boon to any receiving core in the league. For the most part, I really want to, I'm hoping he goes to a place where I can easily talk myself into overdrafting him this year because I know that, or I'm going to have a sense that he's going to get a lot of targets even as a rookie. So I'm looking at my guy, Matthew Golden, again, hoping for the Cowboys connection, but if it doesn't work out that way, it'll still be fun to see where he goes. And just in general with the receivers, the order in which they get drafted will be interesting to me as well. Because it seems pretty obvious that, if you count Travis Hunter, he'll be the first, and then it'll be Tet McMillan. But then after that, it could be Burden, Egbuka, Golden. It could be Golden, Burden, Egbuka. There's a whole bunch of different options. So I think that'll be fun to see. And then if we do see one of those, lines of receivers go, once one team takes one in the mid-teens, are there going to be 3 more that go, and then maybe is there a good offensive lineman that gets pushed down because of it? It'll be interesting to see. But for fantasy purposes, especially the receivers, I'm kind of looking at, it's going to be kind of exciting to see where they fall.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was thinking, like, I want to know if, does Henry Ruggs go at 12 out of nowhere? The Raiders just because he's fast. Like, those kind of surprises in the NFL draft have happened before. Has that happened with a wide receiver this year? But also, like, that, I echo your statement about whenever the third receiver comes off the board. Is it 5 picks till the next one? Is it the 1 pick till the next one?
Yeah.
Like, how long? And is that because teams valued wide receiver number 3 over wide receiver number 4 that much? or is it just because they didn't need wide receivers? Like, obviously that'll all kind of come into play, but I agree with you. And I'm going to let you continue to talk about wide receivers here, since you're kind of on this idea of like where they're being drafted. So talk about your players that you think have the most value, the fantasy value to lose.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night.
This is I promise, disclaimer, this is not just a dig on the Packers because they're the Packers. This is legitimate. I'm legitimately confused and worried
But
about
they suck. Oh.
yeah. I'm legitimately worried and confused about the receiver if it does go in the first round of the Packers, because the Packers have not drafted a receiver in the first round since like 2002. It was over 20 years ago, but they have their franchise quarterback right now. They have Josh Jacobs. They always have a good offensive line. They find a way to do that. Their defense is in pretty good shape. And the issue they've had is, and the issue for us fantasy managers has always been, is Dobbs going to step up? Is Watson going to stay healthy and step up? Is Jaden Reed going to take off? Is Dontavian Wicks going to come out of nowhere? We've had all these names now for at least 2 seasons, and I still feel like there's a lot of uncertainty with which Packers receiver. So to me, it feels like they might be considering a receiver they can make a wide receiver 1. Now, I'm hoping they don't. I'm hoping they don't take a receiver for fantasy purposes because I don't think they need one. For some reason, I feel like they're going to try to get their wide receiver 1, someone to take control of that young room, especially because they can't count on, like, Christian Watson's been injured every year, at least for a little bit, right? They can't count on certain guys. And so is this year they take a receiver, and then for us fantasy guys, if you like Burden, if you like Igbuka, if you like Golden, and they take one of them in the mid-20s there, did they just get lost in the shuffle? And now we have a 5th name that we have to look at for draft season. Like, so I think if a first-round receiver goes to the Packers, I think they immediately lose value because of the uncertainty. So that's kind of a weird way to answer the question, but that's
a good point.
That's where my head was at.
I think the initial reaction, it's pure speculation. I think the initial reaction will be, oh, hell yeah.
Right.
Matthew Golden went to the Packers, like, arrow
Sign me up. Yeah.
Because initially, I think that the public fantasy world is going to think, oh, he's their number 1 automatically. Like, let's go. But I mean, you make some great points about, like, we've been kind of saying that over the past couple of years, and all those players that you mentioned are all good wide receivers.
Yes, I don't understand.
They're good football players. And do the Packers really have to draft a wide receiver? I know their fan base wants to because they never do it, and it's the whole thing. But do they need to? Like, they have 5 good NFL wide receivers.
Yeah.
They just don't have one great one. And quite frankly, they probably won't draft one great one in the mid-20s.
Right.
I mean, maybe they do, but I think all these guys, at least when we talked about them, they're all going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Luther Burden and Matthew Golden and Igbuka, like, I think they're going to be good. I don't think any of us think they're going to be Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb-esque. I think they're going to be good wide receivers.
Yep.
So, I agree with you there. But I do think the sentiment will be, oh yeah, that's going to be a great spot.
Right. That's my fear, is that
need a number 1 guy.
That's my fear. Is I'm with you. They shouldn't need to draft one at all, but my fear is that they might think one, and then everyone's going to be like, oh, we got to draft him. If the Packers with all this talent think that this guy is going to be the one, then all of a sudden it becomes really popular in fantasy, and it worries me.
Yeah.
But it probably won't happen. So
that is a great point. I'm going Omarion Hampton, mostly because of the position he plays. It always feels like we're coming in a little bit higher on RBs kind of prior to the NFL draft and the rookie drafts, and then it always seems they slide further down the draft boards. And then we're like, well, maybe the NFL doesn't actually, they don't value the running backs like fantasy values the running backs. I don't think that, I'm not suggesting Hampton's going to slide by any means, but we have seen it in the past. And I'm just curious to see if that happens. And I do think that if it does happen, if we don't see Omarion Hampton drafted tomorrow night, I think that's a huge hit to his draft fantasy or his fantasy value. Because right now he's being talked about in the 102 space versus Cam Ward in Superflex Dynasty. And I don't think there will be any question about it if he is not drafted tomorrow night that he should be up in that. I think he would slide down potentially behind some of these wide receivers that we have been talking about. And those things have happened in the past. We see that with running backs in the past. So I think that he could really lose a lot of value.
Yep.
I don't think there's a lot of value to be gained tomorrow night because he's already being ranked up so high around the 102, 103. He's not jumping Genty. And so he can't really, he doesn't have a ceiling, or he's already at his ceiling value. I think the only place that he has is to go down. And that to me is like, he has the largest amount of value to potentially lose, simply because I think he's already at his value and we don't know where he's going to be drafted. No, we're not moving Genty. We know where Cam Ward's going to be drafted. We have no idea where Hampton goes, and it might not even be tomorrow. And that's a huge deal to me. For
sure. I'm with you on that for fantasy purposes, 100%, because right now it appears as if he's going to go in the first round.
Yeah.
And so if he doesn't, that's going to be okay. There's like, it's going to be real nervous drafting him with
I think we did this with Najee Harris, if I remember right. He was the guy people thought was going to go earlier, kind of slid, and then nobody else took a running back that year. I think it was that year. There was a year that the running back kind of slid, and then nobody else took a running back in the first round.
I think the Steelers took him at 22 or something. Was that his pick? And he was the only one in that round. Yeah,
the only one. And it was like, wait a minute, what are we doing? and that was kind of the kickstart of like early second round to mid second round running backs. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like if Hampton was being mocked to go early second and he goes early second or mid second, like I don't think his value would change much. But since he's being mocked and everybody's talking about him going 20 or 21 to Denver or these teams, and then he doesn't go, I think that could be a huge hit to his fantasy value. Okay, last one here. I'll go first and I'll let you kind of finish this out. It's the most fantasy value to gain as we finish up here. I'm going with our boy Luther Burden. We know he's projected to be drafted in the later first round, and that to me feels like he could find a gold mine. If he finds the right fit, the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Ravens. I don't really love the Eagles, but maybe the Lions, because there's been some riffraff with Jameson Williams that has come out now. So if he finds that gold mine and the gadget player he is, as we talked about earlier, similar to wide receivers we've seen these teams draft in the past, or even running backs. But I was thinking of Zay Flowers with the Ravens, got drafted late, all of a sudden became a thing. Devonta Smith. Some of these
Zay Flowers was the one we were trying to think about with the Jordan Addison, Quentin Jones.
Oh yeah.
Zay Flowers was in that train of receivers.
You find some of these late. I mean, I know that wasn't as late as we're talking with Luther Burden, but the later in this first round you get, the better the teams are, and Luther Burden is kind of slotted in that range of teams.
Yes.
And it could be Luther Burden, it could be Matthew Golden, it could be any of these guys really. But Burden's the one with that gadgety style. Something the Kansas City Chiefs use a lot. They don't need it because they already have plenty of wide receivers now. Yeah. But something to that effect, if he finds the right squad down there, I think that could really take a huge boost to his fantasy value.
Yeah, I think that's a good player to name, because while he's not my favorite because he's not well-rounded, he's very, very elite at what he does. And so if he's in that right situation, he's going to be pretty consistent for fantasy purposes. He's going to be a go-to guy for your wide receiver too, probably, if he's in the right spot and they're using him effectively. So I think that's a good one. My fantasy value to gain is a receiver we haven't mentioned tonight, and I can't take credit for finding him, but I found him on a sleeper list, and I did some research of my own after the fact. Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State is kind of mocked in the early second right now, like right around pick 40, give or take. But he's another big frame guy like Tet McMillan. He's 6'4", I believe. Let me pull. I had it pulled up a second ago. Sorry. Yeah, 6'4", 215. He's got that big X body. He's a little bit more versatile than that too. He can move around a little bit, and he's one of those guys where maybe because he didn't go to an LSU, didn't go to an SEC school, he's getting overlooked a little bit. But I love that right now he's mocked in the early second. I think if one of those early teams that drafted, Tennessee drafts Cam Ward, or if the Jags draft, Mason Graham with a defensive tackle, if the teams that are bad that have high picks draft for trenches or other things, I think Jaden Higgins is going to be a relative steal at the early second round based on what I'm hearing about him and what I've seen very little of. He is going to be pretty good. And so with that big frame again, I like him as a receiver for the second round. So I think he's got the most fantasy value to gain. Depending on how much you've been paying attention, you may or may not have heard of him yet, but I think after you see him get drafted, probably Friday night, I think he'll start to generate a lot of buzz, and I think we'll see him kind of climb up redraft boards a little bit, but especially dynasty boards. I think he'll be a pick that goes maybe early to mid-second round. So,
yeah, I love that. According to PFF, only 2 drop passes in 2024. So,
yeah,
very reliable hands there. And there's really not a lot of, because we talked about all these wide receivers in the first round.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot. We don't expect there to be a lot of wide receivers left early in the second round, which maybe that pushes his stock up a little bit because of that. But hey, draft capital is a big deal when it comes to evaluating rookies prior to your rookie draft. So a high second round pick for a wide receiver is a pretty big deal, especially if it can be a decent landing spot there. Yeah, I think that wraps it up here. I believe Bite Size Sports, we're trying to get a draft stream going tomorrow night. I know I can't host, so I'm trying to throw it out there to see. So keep an eye out. Maybe come back tomorrow night here on the Bite Size. Just pull us up next to the NFL draft so you get all of our takes. We did it the last couple of years. It's actually a lot of fun because within our group, if we get enough of us, we all like different teams.
Yeah.
And so you get raw reaction, real time, and that's always fun to see. So hopefully we can get that pulled together tomorrow night. Check back here, and then Josh and I'll also be back here. We'll try to help you out through your rookie drafts. We haven't set a full schedule yet, but we'll continue to talk. We'll try to get back out here. We'll try to talk rookie rankings, those kind of things, help you through. Maybe do a rookie mock draft as you prepare for your rookie drafts. Could be a good time here. But Josh, before I close it out, you mentioned the podcast with Simon. What do you got going on? Have you guys released that? Are you doing anything recent with him? Or other things?
Yeah, so Simon and Friends podcast, we did our draft big board. So if you have time to hop on over to his podcast tonight, you can see where we just ranked our top 30. We tried to agree on a top 30 prospects, not just for fantasy, but just top to bottom. And then next Wednesday, we are ranking the team's offseason. So after we see how teams draft, we're going to take a look at how all 32 teams have had their offseason, who's had the best offseason, who's had the worst, and all that sort of stuff. So otherwise, you can find me on at JLime8 on socials, and then enjoy the draft tomorrow. It's tomorrow. That's exciting.
Tomorrow. That's so crazy that it is tomorrow. I am not ready for it. I will be at a baseball game, a T-ball game for my toddlers, and then I'll be running to baseball practice for my young child, my 9-year-old, and prepping for a weekend tournament. So it's going to be a long night for me. and I will run home and hopefully jump on a draft stream. We'll see how that goes. But
There you go.
either way, I will be home before the Chiefs pick. Not the Super Bowl champion Chiefs, unfortunately, but the Super Bowl runner-ups. Nobody cares who gets second place. What am I talking about?
No.
All right,
No.
let's get out of here. We will be back soon with ADP. Thanks you all for hanging out tonight. Have a great time tomorrow, and hopefully the draft goes well for your team.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats to turn to a ghost, I need to